I'm Katie Couric. Breaking news tonight, a shocking new turn in the Virginia Tech massacre.
You had 100 billion chances in the ways to have avoided today.
A package arrives today in the mail from the killer. A major ruling from the Supreme Court on abortion. The court upholds the federal ban on a controversial late-term abortion procedure. And the deadliest day in Baghdad since the security crackdown began. Nearly 200 are killed in the Iraqi capital.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. There's a major development tonight in the Virginia Tech story, a post-mortem message from the killer. In those 2 hours between the first shootings and the massacre, Sung-Hui Cho went to the post office and sent a package by express mail to NBC here in New York City. It arrived today and it included photographs of himself with guns and a DVD. Here now is that video, and we caution you, it's disturbing.
Do you know what it feels like to be spit on your face and have trash shoved down your throat? Do you know what it feels like to dig your own grave? Do you know what it feels like to have your throat slashed from ear to ear? Do you know what it feels like to be torched alive? Do you know what it feels like to be humiliated and be impaled upon on a cross and left to bleed to death for your amusement? You have never felt a single ounce of pain your whole life, yet you want to inject as much misery in our lives as you can, just because you can. You had everything you wanted. Your Mercedes wasn't enough, you brats. Your golden necklaces weren't enough, you snobs. Your trust fund wasn't enough. Your vodka and cognac weren't enough. All your debaucheries weren't enough. Those weren't enough to fulfill your hedonistic needs. You had everything.
The more we learn about Cho, the stranger this story gets, and we learned a lot more today. Sharon Alfonsi is in Blacksburg, Virginia.
He was, by all accounts, a ticking time bomb. Before he went on a murderous rampage, Sung-Hui Cho checked himself into a mental institution. That's right, 2 years ago, the student who killed 32 people was in St. Albans Psychiatric Hospital. It started in 2005 after police received a complaint that he was stalking 2 female classmates. First came the emails.
It was just sort of like, you know, I know who you are, like I want to talk to you, you know, I'm in love with you, just sort of things like that.
This to classmates he never even spoke to. Sarah Stevens is friends with the 2 women. She says Cho showed up at one of their dorm rooms.
He wasn't friends with them, he wasn't talking to them.
No,
he'd just show up at the dorm.
Yeah, I've actually never seen him talk to anyone.
And Sarah was in classes with him for 3 years. It turns out he didn't need to say anything.
It's funny when someone walks into a room and kind of sucks the energy out of a room. And I feel that that was what he did just because he seemed so depressed.
Lucinda Roy was his professor. She was alarmed by his twisted, violent writings and tried to counsel him.
What I always thought, or I imagined I'd get a call saying that he'd killed himself.
Did you ever think he'd hurt somebody else?
I thought he might hurt me.
Roy notified campus police, who said they were powerless to do anything because Cho never technically threatened anyone. And neither of the women who filed stalking complaints ever pressed charges.
But then one of the women requested that Cho never contact her again. Later that day, police received a desperate phone call.
Our department received a call from an acquaintance of Cho's that was concerned that Cho might be suicidal. Based on that interaction with the counselor, a temporary detention order was obtained and Cho was taken to a mental health facility.
Officially, a Virginia court found Cho mentally ill and a danger to himself, based only on that tip from Cho's acquaintance. But a day later, a medical evaluation found his insight and judgment were normal, and he was approved for outpatient treatment. Since he went voluntarily, none of it showed up on Cho's background check. He was able to buy the 2 guns he needed to carry out the killings. And while investigators still don't know what set him off, they say Cho did leave behind what amounts to an 8-page, single-spaced suicide note. Described by sources as a rambling diatribe against people of privilege, Cho rails against, quote, rich people who have Mercedes, gold, and trust funds. It's laced with hatred and expletives, but no clear motive, ending with the ominous phrase, "We'll be together soon."
And now this student who said so little in life leaves a disturbing manifesto, a video manifesto in death. Now, law enforcement sources say that they believe Cho, who tried so hard to conceal his identity right after the shooting, he was going to use this video as a way to reveal himself and to take credit for the crimes. And we'd like to thank our justice correspondent, Bob Orr, tonight for contributing with this report and some key information on this late-breaking story. Katie.
All right, Sharon, our thanks to him and to you tonight. Thank you. With all the warning signs, the question is being asked over and over again, what can be done to stop a person like Sung-Hui Cho before it's simply too late? Cynthia Bowers has more tonight on that.
Late 2005 could have been a turning point for Sung-Hui Cho in Virginia Tech, but it may go down as a missed opportunity.
What should or could have, would have been done, I think, is something that's going to have to come through the investigation.
Christopher Flynn heads the counseling center here at Tech.
Have there been cases here where you have either sent the child home or suggested the parents come get them?
Absolutely. Everyone's concern at Virginia Tech is the emotional and physical, spiritual health of the student. We'll do everything we can to protect that.
But just how far can a university go when it comes to troubled or suicidal students? Attorney Sheldon Steinbeck says federal law gives schools the right to do what they need to do, whether that's call the parents, call the police, or expel the student.
Surely, when a student is disturbed so that he or she is a threat to him or herself or to the academic community, one must act.
Like many schools, George Washington University in Washington, D.C. has a policy that forbids action of any kind that imperils or jeopardizes the health or safety of anyone, including oneself. It was invoked against Jordan Knott when he considered suicide and was treated for depression. Knott was suspended.
I had no clue when I went into the hospital that any of the things that did happen could happen.
Knott sued the school and won a settlement, proving it's not always easy to balance the rights of a student with the safety of a campus, particularly at big schools like this one, where 7 to 8% of the student body seeks counseling each year. That's 2,200 students.
Predicting violence of this nature is extraordinarily difficult because it's so rare.
This week's violence may cause universities around the country to keep closer watch on troubled students. But at this school, any second guessing comes too late to undo the damage. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Blacksburg, Virginia.
During a search of Cho's dorm room, police recovered 2 computers, several books, his notebooks, and a digital camera. They're hoping tonight that these items will help them learn more about the gunman. More on that from our science and technology correspondent, Daniel Seberg.
Sung-Hui Cho's computers will be taken apart by digital forensics experts like Joe Caruso. He can expose secrets keystroke by keystroke.
Places that he went on the internet, what he did when he was there, if he viewed images, if he placed orders, different things like that. We can look at email that he sent and received from his different accounts.
Even if the author thinks they're gone. For example, these files were sent to the trash. Caruso uncovered them and others.
You see the date of the creation of the file and then the user that created that file.
Investigators use documents, emails, even instant messages to piece together motivation and behavior.
It's a very long process of going through everything that's on the hard drive and that's recoverable to make sure nothing's missed.
But how useful is that high-tech trail? Well, take the case of college professor Thomas Murray. When Murray was accused of beating his wife to death in 2003, it took cyber sleuth Dean Brown to crack the case. Brown went to work, digging up everything Murray had typed into his internet searches.
One of the first things we saw was this term here, how to murder someone and not get caught.
He also discovered the meticulous linguistics instructor logged onto his computer like clockwork every Thursday. Those little blue bars represent time logged on. But the day his wife was killed,
no activity. He's not doing what he consistently did every other Thursday.
Other bits and bytes came together.
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
And ultimately, Brown's digital detective work sent Murray to prison for first-degree murder. Obviously, the Virginia Tech families will never get that kind of closure, but the data recovered from Cho's computers should help answer the burning question: why? Daniel Seberg, CBS News, New York.
We are updating the still unfolding Virginia Tech story on our website. For the very latest, you can go to cbsnews.com. Now to another big story tonight, a Supreme Court ruling on abortion. The justices, sharply divided, today upheld the new federal ban on a controversial late-term abortion procedure, a procedure opponents and the law itself refer to as partial birth abortion. In the 5-4 decision, Chief Justice Roberts and Associate Justices Scalia, Thomas, Alito, and Kennedy all voted to uphold the ban. In the majority opinion, Justice Kennedy wrote that opponents of the ban have not demonstrated that the act imposes an undue burden on a woman's right to abortion. We begin our coverage of this ruling with Wyatt Andrews.
It's the first federal ban on any kind of abortion since the court established the right to an abortion in Roe v. Wade. For abortion opponents, it's the biggest legal victory in 34 years.
The court said the states have a legitimate interest in protecting the unborn child's life.
The ban on what Congress called partial birth abortions applies to any abortion where a fetus is delivered mostly intact. The law in part says past the navel, when the doctor then kills the partially delivered living fetus. In a 5-4 decision, Justice Anthony Kennedy said Congress was justified in finding this similar to the killing of a newborn infant.
An overwhelming case was made that this procedure was not necessary, and it was a barbaric procedure.
The ruling is huge because the ban is now the first abortion restriction ever approved with no exception for the health of the mother.
Not the church, not the state. Women must decide their fate.
Abortion rights supporters bitterly protested, even though the number of the banned abortions is small and mostly confined to the third trimester. The protesters say this law can now apply to thousands of second trimester abortions, even when the woman's doctor thinks partial delivery is the safest course.
So now politicians, not doctors, are making medical decisions that are going to put women at risk of hemorrhage, loss of future fertility, and other very serious medical harms.
Opponents of the ban also argue the law could apply to women like Mary Vargas, whose late-term fetus suffered kidney failure in the womb.
Our son had no chance at life.
Her choice, she says, was between birth, where the child would suffer and die, or the kind of mostly intact abortion that's now illegal.
It's wrong for this law to exist at all. Nobody could agonize over the decision more than my husband and I did.
In a stinging dissent, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg called the ruling alarming and irrational and blasted the all-male majority for not respecting women's choices. This way of thinking, she wrote, reflects ancient notions about women's place in the family. This is one of those rulings that will have a long-term impact. The very definition of a safe and legal abortion has just changed, with abortion opponents saying it's about time. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News at the Supreme Court.
Our CBS News legal analyst Andrew Cohen is in Denver tonight. Andrew, why is this such a significant ruling?
Well, it's a significant ruling, Katie, because as Wyatt says, it does change the legal landscape. It makes it easier not just for doctors to be penalized. They can go to prison now if they perform this sort of procedure. It also opens up the floodgates in states to criminalize this procedure and to enact and try to enforce other procedures, other restrictions upon abortion rights. The Supreme Court today has basically given them the green light to go ahead and do that. And I think a lot of folks in a lot of states have been waiting for this sort of a ruling. It doesn't apply, remember, Katie, to the vast majority of people who may want to have an abortion. Their procedures are still protected, but there are perhaps thousands of women who are affected by this. They were the ones who wanted a victory here, wanted something different than they got today.
And what does this mean, in your view, to the future of Roe v. Wade, the 73 Supreme Court decision which legalized abortion?
Yeah, I think that's the question everyone's going to be asking. I think Roe versus Wade is still safe for now. There are still 5 justices on the court, including Justice Kennedy, who wrote the majority opinion today for the restriction on the abortion right. He's still in the Roe versus Wade camp, but I tell you, the hold on Roe versus Wade is as tenuous as it has ever been. It's a 1-vote margin, and I think we're going to see, Katie, in the wake of this ruling today, a direct frontal assault on Roe versus Wade. Somebody's going to make that case. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, and who knows what happens from there.
Andrew Cohen. Andrew, thank you. There is much more CBS News ahead. Coming up next, the new horrors in Iraq. A series of deadly attacks raise more doubts about the security crackdown in Baghdad. President Bush had that meeting he wanted today with Democratic congressional leaders about funding the war in Iraq, but neither side budged on the matter of deadlines for withdrawing U.S. troops. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says the bill provides all the money the president wants for the troops, but Mr. Bush opposes any timetable for withdrawal and vows to veto the bill once it gets to his desk. In Iraq, today was the deadliest day since that security crackdown began more than 2 months ago. Across the country, more than 230 Iraqis were killed. In Baghdad alone, the death toll topped 180, with 148 wounded in 5 major bombings in Shiite neighborhoods. Correspondent Martin Seemungle reports for CBS News from Baghdad.
Black smoke is a sight everyone in Baghdad dreads because at its source, chaos, streets and bodies blown apart, death all around. Impossible to imagine that this was once the crowded Sadriya market. A single bomb here today killed more than 100 people. Residents were furious. This is democracy, they shout. Let our government come and see this. It's all the fault of the Americans, another man screams. It was one of 5 deadly bombings in Baghdad in less than 8 hours, most in Shiite areas. At this checkpoint in Sadr City, a Shiite stronghold, a suicide car bomber killed 35. It was the worst day of violence since the troop surge began almost 3 months ago. The surge meant putting many more American troops on the streets of Baghdad in order to stop the sectarian killings and make it harder for suicide bombers to find their targets. At first it worked. Many militiamen left the city or went underground. There were fewer bombings in central Baghdad. Life was returning to the streets. Now sectarian killings are on the rise and the bombers are back in the capital with a vengeance. Sunni extremists are thought to be behind most of the recent attacks, which targeted heavily Shiite areas. The plan, everyone here knows, is simple: to ignite the all-out civil war the surge was designed to stop. For the people of Baghdad, the reality is, despite the troop surge, they still live and die in the most dangerous and violent city on earth. Martin Seemungle for CBS News, Baghdad.
Coming up next, she witnessed the very moment the deadly day of violence began at Virginia Tech. Many Virginia Tech students are living with memories they cannot lay to rest. Today, Thalia Ashuris talked to a freshman who was one room away when the carnage began.
You really loved living that dorm, right?
Oh, yeah.
Freshman Molly Donahue lived in West Ambler Johnston dorm room 4038. She was startled awake about 7 Monday morning.
I heard a really loud shriek from a female voice. I opened my door, and that's when I saw the sneaker prints and blood.
Molly roomed next door to Emily Hilscher, 2 doors down from R.A. Ryan Clark, the first 2 victims of the massacre. She tried to get into Emily's room, but the door would barely budge.
I'm pushing the door open, and there's a body.
She knew something was wrong and went for help. In your heart, do you believe that Emily was a random choice?
I do. I really do. I really do. Because it's proven that this guy, really was not in the right state of mind. He killed professors. He killed one of my friends. He didn't just kill my RA and my homie, he killed my friends.
Has it really all sunk in yet?
Just when I think it has, I find a new emotion I've never felt before. I get nervous or I get scared, but it usually doesn't last too long, and I feel like, at least when I'm with people and when I'm with my friends who go here, I feel more at peace and I feel very calm.
Thalia Ashuris, CBS News, Blacksburg, Virginia.
An update now on the breaking news tonight in the Virginia Tech massacre story. The post-mortem message received today from the killer, Sung-Hui Cho, including photographs and this rambling and disturbing video.
When the time came, I did it. I had to. You had 100 billion chances and ways to have avoided today. but you decided to spill my blood. You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option. The decision was yours. Now you have blood on your hands that will never wash off. You just loved crucifying me. You loved inducing cancer in my head, terrorizing my heart, and raping my soul all this time. I didn't have to do this. I could have left. I could have fled. But no, I will no longer run. If not for me, for my children, for my brothers and sisters that you I did it for them.
Our justice correspondent Bob Orr described it as an in-your-face message from Cho. Included in the package was an 1,800-word manifesto that investigators are now poring over tonight. Cho apparently had hoped to remain anonymous in the hours after the shootings and used this message to reveal his identity. That is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric in New York. Thank you for watching. Good night.